Good evening and welcome to the Maple Plain City Council meeting. It is Monday, June 27th at 7 p.m. and I'm calling the meeting to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I am looking for a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Cahill, second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. At this time, I'd like to invite Chief McCoy forward for the fire department swearing in.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council and the viewing public. It is a privilege to be here tonight to swear in one of our new firefighters that applied approximately 1 year ago, and we'll be swearing in. Sorry about that. Hang on to this thing. Be swearing in Holden Mose tonight, firefighter, which, being a firefighter, is one of the world's most honored but dangerous occupations. And I probably shouldn't say that with his parents and in-laws here and his bride. When there's an emergency in the community, firefighters are one of the first on the scene. Firefighters are there at very devastating ravages of fire, motor vehicle crashes, tornadoes, hazmat material, rescue operation, explosions, medical emergencies, and most recently the COVID pandemic, which our firefighters never miss an opportunity to assist and render aid to those in need. Truly our hometown heroes. Firefighters are civil servants. As sworn officers, they follow standard policies and procedures of the fire service, standard operating procedures of our department, and they're there to prevent human suffering and death, to stabilize incidents and to prevent damages and loss to property. It is a great honor tonight to have the opportunity to swear in Holden Mose of the Maple Plain Fire Department. Holden is a 2012 Orono High School graduate and married his high school sweetheart, Lauren. Holden attended many Maple Plain Fire Department events growing up. I think it was with the Doyle kids. Growing up in the area, and as a result, the desire to be a firefighter was born within him. I'm glad you chose Maple Plain Fire Department to be the department you would want to be a firefighter on Holden. Holden and his bride Lauren have resided in the City of Independence the last few years and have a little girl, Elise. And Holden is a contractor, mainly remodeling homes. Holden applied and became a probationary firefighter on June 28, 2021. Holden has completed his firefighter 1, 2, hazmat, and his emergency medical responder classes. Plus, on top of that, nearly every Monday night, he was at our fire station to do in-house training. I'd like to take this time to especially thank Lauren and her family and Holden's family for the sacrifice and support during this past year as Holden completed his training requirements. It completed hundreds of hours, and I know at times you had to get a babysitter when your bride Lauren had to go to work as a neonatal nurse in a hospital. So again, thank you, Lauren, for your sacrifice, your patience, and to your extended family for stepping in and caring for the little one during his training time. As you well know, it's not only the firefighter that has to go through all this training, but it's a sacrifice on the family's part to be a successful firefighter and to be able to help and serve our communities that you reside in. After I swear in Holden, his bride Lauren will come forward and pin his badge on his uniform, and then following that, our uniform officer, Captain Ed McGitty, will have another presentation for Holden. So if you want to step forward, Holden, wherever you are, and then repeat after me, and you're going to have to say this into the mic also. I, Holden Mose,
I, Holden Mose,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I'll defend the Constitution of the United States of America
state of Minnesota, against all enemies, both foreign and domestic,
and the state of Minnesota against all enemies, both foreign and domestic,
and I'll faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as a firefighter of the Maple Plain Fire Department
and I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as a firefighter of the Maple Plain Fire Department
under the appointment of the department according to the laws of Minnesota,
under the appointment of the department according to the laws of Minnesota,
County of Hennepin,
County of Hennepin,
the cities we serve,
and the cities we serve,
to the best of my skills and abilities,
to the best of my skills and abilities.
so help me God.
So help me God.
And Lauren, if you could step forward and pin your hubby's badge.
Thank you.
Lauren, you can stay here if you want. And at this time, our uniform captain will have another presentation.
So in addition to receiving his shiny new badge tonight, Holden also will get a new front on his fire helmet, kind of a badge of honor for a firefighter. As Ray mentioned, for the first year of his career with Maple Plain, he had to wear the ugly yellow probationary front, which signifies that he's a rookie and doesn't know what he's doing on fire cars. So now that he's been through all of his training, a year's worth of training, he gets to wear a front just like the rest of the firefighters, so he should be honored to receive his new helmet tonight.
In appreciation of all of our firefighters and especially Holden tonight, we're going to take a 10-minute recess to allow for the firefighter family to take some photos. So we will reconvene at 7:18. Thank you.
And Mayor, I appreciate the large crowd to watch Holden be honored tonight. I appreciate
Thank you.
everybody that's in attendance.
All right. All right. Good evening. Thank you so much for your flexibility and allowing us time to celebrate that. If I could get everyone's attention, we're going to start. Bang it a couple. Good evening. Thank you for your patience. While we took that recess, we really appreciate it. We are going to move on with our agenda this evening. The next item of business is visitors to be heard. During this time, you are welcome to come forward to the microphone. Please submit your public information form to staff by the podium. I'd ask that you speak 3 minutes or less. Try not to be repetitive of what has been said, and make sure that we keep all of our comments respectful. All right. Are there any visitors to be heard this evening?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Denise Sweet. You guys, I was here last month on 4999 Independent Street on our sod issue. I have pictures from 2018 that I would like to present, along with 2020 after the grass died, 2021, and current, along with the petition that I had signed with over 20 signatures. I'd also like to bring a question to you guys. I'd like to know how many people got a notice to cut their weeds that were over 8 inches? Or was I targeted because I am the one that brought this motion a month ago? So am I the only one that received a notice?
I do not have that answer, and during public comment, it is not an interactive time, so staff will have to get back to you.
Okay, so we were here a month ago with the same thing, and we were asking for answers on our questions,
Oh, I
what's
was
going to
answering
happen. Okay, but then you're saying it's
Your
not a
windows.
public interaction time. So now we're here today to try to figure out what have you guys came to resolution about our weeds and our bad sod.
Do you want to address that now, staff, what we talked about at the workshop?
Again, we've tried to keep the conversation going, looking at different options. We've been attempting to get quotes from.
Speak up. Some of us are hard of hearing.
I'll do my best. So we've been trying to get quotes. It's kind of a tricky job in it. So we haven't gotten a lot of interest in quote process. But also we've been looking at, what kind of information we have available, what kind of information have you been able to present that essentially sort of helps determine if it truly is a city liability and we should be investing in it, or if it kind of comes down to some other issues.
Okay, and what are the other issues that you so-called are speaking of?
How much
I've
would
seen
you
your
like
data.
to do
I mean,
this?
it's right here with your watering per month and who did watering for this month and that month, and your data chart that you wanted to present. That's complete not accurate, because if you look at it, our lawns were installed. Oh, you weren't even here, so that's what makes it really frustrating, and you don't even live in Maple Plain. So in 2018, at the end of 18, I have a picture of my yard completely dug up in October 25th of 2018. The sod wasn't laid until the end of July, mid to end of July of 2019. So we went our whole summer of 2018 without lawns and our roads completely dug up. And then we went through until, so we had May, June, July, 3 months of our yards dug up. And then you guys started sodding in the worst heat possible. But here's my evidence and my pictures. You guys can have that. You can spread around. But I have that my neighbor on Howard and Independence spent over $2,000, and their yard still, because of what happened, the weeds are still coming up. I have people that tried to seed, spent hundreds of dollars. That's Carrie, $2,000 she spent. I paid for the weeds to be killed in my yard, and that's why all my grass is dead, because I killed all the weeds, but not the grass. I had a professional come in and do my weed killing like they do, and it's just dead grass. You can see in the pictures. And now this year I said I'm not spending any more of my hard-earned money on this, and now it's just weeds, and then I get a notice that I need to cut my weeds down and use my mower to cut these weeds down. So I would really like the information emailed to me, which you guys have. How many people got this notice? Because I can go around and measure that it's under 8 inches, that it's not.
Do you have the list? Do you want me to go off the list or just let people come up?
Oh, I can just, as they come up.
Sorry, and you come forward if you just state your name and address.
Caroline
please.
Arvison, 1644 Howard Avenue, Maple Plain, Minnesota. And we've put about $2,000 into making our sod better, and we're still working on it, and we continue to have to pay a lawn service to come out and treat it with chemicals. And that was only up to the driveway that we have in the back on actually Independence. We have not taken care of what's that at all because it was too costly. We shouldn't be paying that type of amount of money for easement if we don't have sod that works. And our neighborhood looked beautiful before. We did need that service that was completed, but we needed our city to back us on making sure that the lawn was taken care of, and that it looked like it did before we did that.
Thank you. Anyone else who filled out a public comment form?
Yeah, I'm Don Johnson, 1669 Howard Avenue. And when they were doing all the construction work and doing the lawns, they came in and they rototilled and they put dirt down. And it was like 2 months later that they did the sod. But what happened was we got a lot of rain. We got heavy rain, and it washed all the soil away, and it left us with nothing but hard-packed sand. And it was like cement. And when the crews came in to put the sod down, they had metal rakes, and they were trying to scratch on the surface of the hard dirt, which was like concrete. So they got a few particles loose, and then they put the sod down on top of that. And I watered the heck out of that lawn all summer, probably more than anybody else. And my lawn looked pretty good right then. But there's no way that the roots were going to take into that cement, into that hard sand. And the following spring, I did a lot of watering too. And but as summer came along, I was losing it, losing the yard, losing the sod, and it wasn't the right kind of sod to begin with. So it couldn't handle up to the sun. It was shade grass, and so that was wrong. It was wrong stuff. And so I had patches that died out, and I tried putting in dirt and reseeding it myself with little luck. So I'm just, I'm really frustrated. I feel like we got cheated. I really do. It was improperly done. And I'm looking for an economical way, for the city to appease us. I'd like them to come in and rototill it. We've got to kill the grass, kill the weeds. I tried to kill them again this spring, but that dead sod is just such a great compost for growing weeds. I had my lawn killed off here, I thought, this spring. I thought I had enough time to reseed it. But if you look at my yard right now, which I hope you do, because a month ago, I just had about just every weed killed in that yard. I had it just about down to dark dirt. And now I've got more than 8-inch weeds in my yard right now. The whole thing is terrible. The whole thing is terrible. So I'm really having trouble just killing the weeds. So, I don't know if the city's still, we don't have our own maintenance team anymore, do we? Now it's Independence that does all the maintenance work for us. Because if we did, we could have just the city come in and turn our yards over and reseed it for us, which I think is the way to go. But it'd be nice to have that done in September. It's it's too hot now. I'd like to have my yard get some processing done and improve it by September. So my other question is, what have you guys discussed? Can you give us any summation of what you've discussed about our problem?
Yeah, staff already did do that tonight.
Well, we haven't heard it. We need to hear it.
I believe she
What
just did.
I had just spoken earlier, a couple minutes ago, was just sort of we've got a limited amount of data, trying to determine kind of what happened and what the problem was, because we have a lot of statements from residents, but there's not much, unfortunately, accessible on our end, to kind of support it. And so what we've been doing is kind of looking at things, looking at options, trying to get quotes from vendors to, what that actually would look like, what would those costs be.
I see. So there's no way we could get, like, the city Independence, the maintenance department, come in and do some of this work for us to save the city money? Because nothing's free. It's going to cost us even if you guys come in and do it. We realize it.
We already paid.
So anyways, we'd like to work with the city, find some practical, economical ways to do this, Or if we could just hire individuals to come out and rototill everything out, kill it, rototill it, and reseed it. I know sodding is going to be too expensive, and then you need a crew and everything. So I'm thinking seeding is the way to go, especially since we got to tear this all up anyway. We got this dead mat stuff, and all it grows is weeds. So I guess that's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
it. Appreciate it.
Johnson.
This is Caroline Arvison. I'd like to ask a couple more questions. Why did the city agree to sign off on the contract with the reconstruction of the road without waiting a year? Isn't that typically what it goes for? but you guys apparently, from what I've heard, and we've complained about it since it started, and our lawn started dying, that you guys didn't, from what I interpret from her, is that you guys didn't really know about it, but I don't believe that's truthful, because I've left messages for the mayor, and no one calls me back. And I'm just wondering, when did you guys decide you actually need to step up to the plate with this? Because now we're dealing with it. I've spent a lot of money, other residents have spent a lot of money, excuse me, and I just don't understand what it is that's taking you guys so long to react to it. Our community doesn't look to me that I would want to buy a house in this area. So I think it's decreased the value of my home. And that's just the bottom line, is I can't probably sell my home. Well, why is all this, 8 feet in? Well, 8 feet's the easement. The easement's the city's. City doesn't want to maintain it. City doesn't want to mow it, like Denise said. So I'm just wondering, when were you guys finally going to finally say, hey, you know what? Our city doesn't look like it did before. Thank you.
Hi, Jim Evivold, artist Evivold's son, 1649 Baker Park Road. We were here, I was here at the first meeting when the engineers were all here and stuff, but I swore that there had been a warranty. And then later on, I've worked with Bobby, Mayor, and have emails and stuff, but was there a warranty from the vendor on the sod?
I don't remember on this particular project. I would have to look back.
Okay.
I believe it was a 60-day.
60 days on the side?
Right,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah. She's got a $20,000 special assessment. And the family now, we're on the title, so I hope that's okay, I'm here. But, like this other lady said, it looks terrible. And we have a ditch problem, which is the county. So I think you're aware of that, Julia. And so we got both issues. Anybody who drives down Independence and hits Baker Park and take a right, they put a bunch of white rock in there. And anyway, that's the county. I've learned that, right? But anyway, yeah, so it's been 3 years now, and like everybody says, it looks terrible. And I think people just want to know if you really care, the council. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marcy Schaefer. I live on Howard Avenue. And when they put in the sod, I have a company out of Loretto that comes in and sprays for weeds, and I've had them there for years, and they do a great job. It wasn't too long, and all the grass that was put in was dead because of all the weeds and stuff. It was such poor quality. It was really bad. And like everybody else, it's too expensive to have anything done. But I understand how everybody is so upset, because you think that what you're trying to do is for the good of Maple Plain, for sure, but this just did not go as planned, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peggy Peterson, 1669 Howard Avenue. Not only was the sod bad, but when they took down our trees, they dropped them everywhere and put holes all over the rest of our yard. So I told the guys, hey, you got to fill in the rest of the holes. So they took their little end loader, and they took dirt and they put it all over our regular lawn. So when Don came home from work, the rest of our lawn had dirt all over it. So the rest of our lawn was ruined from the construction crew. So our regular lawn had dirt on it. So not only did our regular lawn, our sod got ruined, but the regular lawn got ruined too. And also, we had a brand new asphalted driveway. And from that corner being done, and from all the equipment being done on our lawn, our asphalt driveway was cracked too. We talked to the city manager, I can't tell you how many times, about our driveway being cracked. They blew us off. Would not do a damn thing about it, excuse my French. But they wouldn't do anything about our cracked driveway. So we had a ruined cracked driveway too. So there were many things being on that corner that happened to our lawn. So not only is our sod ruined, but the rest of our lawn is ruined too. And we have a cracked driveway. So we are very unhappy. Not only did we have a porta potty on our lawn,
It got knocked over from the party in the park. So we had chemicals all over our sod. It took 2 days for that porta potty to get picked up from our lawn. So we have chemicals all over from where that porta potty is. So that will never grow there either. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy from Maple Plain here on Independence 4827. I got frustrated because I lost complete trust. I don't believe it was handled well. So when I'm looking at what has happened to basically everybody, it was very poor soil. It was a sandy soil where I was at, and rock was piled up. And I watered like crazy, and the water bill was $700. You know, it was quite a bit of money. And so I decided to take care of it myself, and I would like to be compensated with all my labor and my efforts and the maintenance that I took care of. And I think $3,000 is pretty reasonable. What I did is I took all the old sod because it was completely dead. As I rolled it up, almost like you could roll a carpet, and underneath it was real sandy, poor soil. Nothing's going to grow in that soil. The sod was pretty, but it can't grow in that soil. I have a beautiful garden in the back, and I love gardening. So over the next 5 to 6 weeks, I would cut my lawn and put all my grass clippings down. And as it would get nice and crisp and dry, it became a mulch. I added quite a bit of manure on top, and then I went ahead and let it settle down, and then I seeded. And it looks nice now, but it took a lot of effort and a lot of my labor. And I think it's important that our community looks well taken care of. I didn't want to do all of this. I enjoy doing yard work, but I would like to be compensated for all the effort, and I don't have much trust in this council. So you have that understanding. So if you could compensate me, I would be very thankful, you know, because I don't believe the soil that was taken away was not good soil that was brought back. And I believe that's why most of the sod died. It was really poor soil. It doesn't really matter about shade or sun. I mean, it makes a difference. Sometimes they mix it together. As you put the seed in, it says shade and sun. But yeah, I would like to be compensated, yeah. I think it's important that the neighborhood looks nice and we're all happy. And I believe if we get compensated for the efforts that we do, maybe that trust can get built up and a better relationship here. Don't you believe that? Yeah. Because that's how, if we communicate to one another, I believe it'll work out. But I don't want to come back next month and say the same thing. I believe we can take care of it today, don't you think? I would like it taken care of. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Brown, 1718 Howard Avenue. Does anybody in this council have a list of what we paid for on our assessment, item for item list? Because I think that sod was included in that list. All these people here, you work for us. We don't work for you. This stuff, all the discussion in the world is not going to get our sod fixed. And if these people putting out of their own pockets on top of their assessment isn't right. You people are supposed to be fixing this stuff, and you would say you're going to discuss it, and your answer was pretty pathetic. Don't be smirking. You work for us. We don't work for you. I'm just disgusted the way you people are handling this business. I'm just shaking right now because I'm so ticked off. But Can you come up with a list on that, what we got paid for, or what we paid for out of our tax money? An itemized list? Nobody's got an answer for that? Who's the engineer? Who headed up that project? Nobody here wants to be accountable for anything. That is really pathetic. If I did this at my job, I'd be out on the street in about a minute. I ain't got nothing more to say.
Anyone else who has not spoken?
I just have one last thing because I know that Clarissa does have my email address, so I'd like all the questions that anyone asked sent directly to me, if that's okay. I'd like the detailed list of what we paid sent to me. I would like to know who all got notices, not who got notices, how many notices were sent out, because I know I can't know who got notices, but I want to know how many notices were sent out for over 8 inches of weeds.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I
Mr.
believe
Landsman.
what was just asked was for data practices request, and so if there is data that is requested, it should go through normal channels with a application made with city administration. We have a city forum for that, and then.
Can you speak up so we can hear, please?
So, anyways, that's a normal course, and then responses to data practices are covered under the statute with regard to time periods. And at the same time too, any request for data can be reviewed by staff to make sure that it's data that can be released and make sure that we can be responsive.
All right. Did you hear that?
Yes, I have one more comment. This is Caroline Arvison. First off, sir, you need to speak into the microphone. People who are hard of hearing cannot. The woman over here I know is a neighbor of mine, and she can't hear very well. So I understand that maybe you want to act like, you don't understand the projection of a voice, but you do need to use the microphone. And we deserve respect. If I hear that you're going to throw the statute out on us, then it becomes a legal issue. So, and that's just what, I don't think our residents want to get into a situation that there could be any legal action taken.
Maybe lawful would be better than legal, because they're completely separate.
All right. All right. Is that all of the visitors to be heard, Clarissa? Do you have the forms?
Was the project, did the project end up over budget or under budget? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
That'd be interesting. Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right.
Would that be okay? This was kind of dropped in our lap, and it's kind of like a contract if you're talking legal. Are you talking legal or lawful? There's a huge difference between the two. I don't remember signing a contract or saying anything in that manner, and assumption doesn't always mean yes. If you go lawfully, you need to, I mean, I don't see the value here. I don't feel like I received value, and it was very distressful for the people for what happened. That was distressing. The neighborhood didn't go well. It was an extra effort and lots of work and cost. Okay, those really need to be in consideration so that both are being, considered here. And then there's some value when the people are valued. Yeah. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
All right. Is that all the forms you had?
Yeah, but we wanted to say something, but it's not on this issue.
Oh, but this is the
This
public
is-
comments? So if you wanted to say something, this is the time.
Well, I just wanted, my name's Martha McCabe, and I live actually just across the border in Independence. But I'm here in support of Kurt and Collision Corner, because it seems to me the little town of Maple Plain doesn't have a lot of employers. I understand it's an issue, you know, the issues, and he's working on them, but I think to push someone, you know, when there was COVID, when, like you were saying, getting quotes is difficult, and trying to get the work done, it seems to me you should give him more time and give more time on this, because employers, I understand it's a long time and he's had time, but it's hard to be an employer. We've lost a lot of business around here, and I just hope we don't lose any more.
Thank you, Ms. McCabe.
Mayor,
Oh.
the item for Collision Corner is on the agenda.
Yes.
And so this portion of the council of the meeting wouldn't be the proper spot to talk about this. There would be an opportunity for the property owner and anybody else who wants to talk about it to talk at that time. So I don't think the open forum or this right here would be the right time to talk about this issue. We should talk about it.
So we'll have another public hearing?
Well,
New business?
yeah, I
Or
think we'll
open it back up?
allow people from the public to talk on that item then, and have it all under that agenda item.
Okay.
Before everyone goes, can we get a clarification though, Scott? So you were suggesting that if people want data, they should make an official request to the administrator through written channels.
Correct. I was making no opinion with regards to the matter at hand, any contracts that were out there. But if there is information that is, or data that is requested from the city, there's application or form should be filled out with city administration, and so that it can be processed, and then we can make sure that the city is responsive to the request that's made. That's all. Okay. There was no implication about the legal matter of this or the matter at all. Just that we want to the city wants to make sure that if there's something that you want with regards to data, that the proper channels are followed and make sure we can be responsive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have to bring my elderly mother back. I want to speak quickly. I know you're not supposed to, but yeah, my mother needs this guy to help with his car, with her car. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Landsman. Next item of business this evening is the consent agenda, and with that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes city council meeting minutes and 2022 street project pay requests.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill.
Second.
Second by Francis. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item of business this evening is accounts payable, and I'm going to turn that over to staff.
I didn't print it out. Does anybody have any questions? I had kind of itemized, I think, just kind of a few things of note, but nothing terribly exciting.
Okay. I'm hearing no questions. I'm looking for one motion to approve the city check batch.
So moved.
Moved by DeLuca.
Second by Fay.
All in favor of approving the city check batch signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 5-0. I'm looking for another motion to approve the fire partnership check batch.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill.
Second.
Second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the fire partnership check batch signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Accounts payable passes 5-0. Next item of business this evening is staff reports, which have been submitted in writing and are in the packet from our planner from West Hennepin Public Safety, our engineer, Public Works, People Service, our fire department, and administration and finance. Are there any questions from staff? From council? Any staff that would like to add or elaborate on anything? Okay, hearing none. Looking for a motion to receive staff reports A through F.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilmember Fay,
Second?
second by Councilmember Cahill. All in favor of accepting the staff reports as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item of business this evening is our 2022 bond sale, and I believe I'm going to turn that over to Todd from Abdo.
From Ellers.
Ellers, sorry.
Call me what you
It's
will.
been a stressful night.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for being here.
Council members, staff, Todd Hagan from Ellers and Associates. And so we helped sell your bonds today. This morning, we took bids up to 10 o'clock this morning, I believe. And it's for the street reconstruction and some water and sewer projects. If you remember, I was here a couple months ago to kind of talk about how we're going to sell that and the terms and conditions, and set the sale date then for tonight. So yeah, I looked on the sale calendar today, and Ellers was helping with 4 out of the 6 sales today in Minnesota. So
Wow.
you are with a good group of folks. So thank you for the business. So before we get into the bids, I did want to say congratulations. You maintained your AA rating with Standard & Poor's, a stable outlook. Clarissa was on the phone with us with the analysts. We just really had to kind of just update them from 2021 numbers. So we showed them your 21 audit and budget for 22 and your economic outlook. And all of that, and it came back with the AA, with sort of a hint of maybe within the coming years that you might be looking at something a little bit higher than that if you maintain what you're doing today. So congratulations to council and staff, right, for doing the right thing. So there were really no major shifts in the as far as the rating, but your budgetary performance score went up from weak to strong. If you read the report that's attached to my report, we did kind of talk about, the city does transfer discretionary transfers out from the, from the general fund to kind of maintain your policy level and go to a capital fund, so you can pay cash for some projects. And so we did get them to kind of count that because it can kind of go back and forth if needed with council action. So that was, I think that was a score for us on that. But everything looked real stable and pretty much status quo otherwise. But it's nice to know that, keep doing what you're doing and, maintaining, proper reserves and abiding by your policy and all that. And you might get a rating increase at some point here, right? So that's good. But I love just maintenance right now. That's a good thing for the times we're in, right? So we did receive three bids today, and Baird out of Milwaukee was the winner, and they have like 19 participants that go in with them. You can recognize some of those folks. So they do a lot of real hard job to kind of win this for you. Piper Sandler, used to be Piper Jaffray, I think, out of Minneapolis was second. And then Northland Securities was third. So we're looking at a 3.49% true interest cost on this. It just went up to 3.5 from the third bidder, so not a whole lot of room in there. Real tight bidding, real competitive today. I like to see 3 or more bids, so I'm happy to see 3. Different in total interest rates, maybe, or interest cost is $1,200 or something. So any of them would have, been fine, but Baird stepped up to the plate and got you the 3.49. It was a little higher than when I was here 2 months ago. It was 2 months because we had to kind of get that public hearing in place for the street part of this. So I guess it doesn't surprise me that it went from our projections of 3.2 to 3.5 or so right now. So we all know rates are increasing, but you guys are locking in today while the rates go up, right? So that's good. That's good. So we had so it was $1,380,000 was what it was. So Baird, the winning bid, it gave us more money than what we needed, and that's called a premium. So if you look on the bid tabulation, they're all 4% all the way down. So we didn't need the extra money that was generated. We call that production on their end, and that's coming from cash from the customers. So the customers like this 4% they're holding on for the bond, so they can kind of, when rates go up, they can still trade it, right? And so because we didn't need $65,000 of that, we gave that back to them. So we effectively kind of burnt, so to speak, the yield down to that second column on the bid tab that you see, 1.95% to 3.6. So we're getting right into where the market is. So yeah, if you don't need that extra money, which is basically a bidding parameter, it's kind of how they all are bidding these days. 9 times out of 10, we give it back to them and lower the bond down. So we lowered it by $65,000. So you're at $1,315,000. So less bonds to pay, right, at that little higher interest rate that they're giving us. So we're good there. Real close to the to basically tags out pretty well. Really attached, we've got the bid tabulation, the final sources and uses, the payment schedule, carved into 3 parts: street, sewer, water. So easy to kind of get that into your financial plan. The rating report is attached too for you to take a look at. I just hit the highlights, but it is kind of fun to read it. And there's a nice little chart in there kind of at the very end of the report that kind of shows you how you've sort of progressed if you like statistics. Kind of neat to see that. And then the BBI graph, the bond buyer index graph, is there that shows the 30-year trend of what's going on. So 1 week it might be going down, and 1 week goes up, and so that's what we've seen so far too. Is sort of this dance going back and forth a little bit. So not real high spikes anymore, just sort of gradual up, I think, but then goes down and up a little bit more. So bond resolution is also attached from your wonderful bond attorneys from Kennedy and Graven, also in the packet. So after my talk here, we basically are filling in the blanks. I know Gina put everything in pretty final for you for the second batch that you might have got this afternoon, but closing is July 14th. You'll get all the money at once on July 14th, so you can invest it until you spend it, which is fine because those rates are going up too, right? So it's all good. So slow down and spend it slow, right? So make some money, make some money on your money. Other than that, like I said, that's the official action tonight. If you like what you see, I'll be here, obviously here for questions too, but you would consider the award of that bond resolution in front of you. So any questions from the group? I talked to Mike a little bit, and Baird Milwaukee likes you guys. They've bid on they bid on every bond you've had since I've been here. They win more than they don't. This group of 3 right here has probably been with you the whole time, and they kind of just move around a little bit. So it just depends what their customer base is and what's going on on that particular day. So they're all 3 very responsible bidders. So.
Questions for Tom?
Is the ratings report, the S&P rating report, is that just a supplement to the phone conversation? I mean, are the bidders on that phone conversation?
Nope.
No.
So they're looking at, so that's the beauty of a general obligation bond. So these bidders can see your AA and compare it to anybody in the nation, right, on that. So it just makes it a little easier for them as well. But no, we set this all up for them ahead of time. So it's just they can do a quick take about you, because they're spinning around looking at all sorts of municipalities to bid on. So your AA jumps out at them, and then they might take a look at that offering document that we produce, then kind of look and do a little internal rating for you too, because they've got folks that look at that. But mostly if they're looking around at trying to find a AA, that's all that matters for them, So you get some high quality customers on their end too, looking for this higher rated credits, for, I don't know, sometimes it's insurance companies too that are looking for this stuff, right? They got a boatload of money and they need to invest it for a long time. So might end up actually ended up heading over there, So yeah, if we negotiate a bond, like a bond that would be not a general obligation, I've done many telecom bonds and hospital bonds and electric bonds and things like that, then sometimes we have a predetermined purchaser, like a Baird or Northland or a Piper or somebody, and then sometimes they get on those calls because we're kind of all in this together as we plow through a bond that has a little bit more of a story to it, which are those types of facility type bonds that are net revenue type bonds, So that was my long answer.
It's all right. We appreciate it. You've put a lot of work and time into this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys did a lot of work too, and you're setting this all up every year, when you issue a bond, or every other year, and I'm sure staff appreciates this too. You've got all these plans put together, and the capital plan, and the financial management plans, and things like that. They really like that, and any more policies you can put together, the better, because when they're shifting in council, it just makes for a more consistent management, and that's what they like to see. This transparency is a big deal, and no matter who's sitting here, and we all hope you stay here forever, but sometimes you move around a little bit, and staff does. It's nice to have that consistency. I think that's what it's all about, just set it up for the next people that come up, and that's I think that's the story. So yeah, so you're doing a good job on that. That's what they're telling me. All right.
Any other questions for Todd?
I have a question. Are you guys bonded? Yeah. Right? Have you been audited, or do they do stuff like that, like in any corporate type business, or?
All right, so we have a motion to approve a resolution awarding the sale of the general obligation street reconstruction and utility revenue bond series 2022A in the original aggregate principal amount of $1,315,000, fixing their form and specifications, directing their execution and delivery, and providing for their payment.
So moved, Mayor.
Moved by Councilmember DeLuca.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cahill. This is a resolution vote, so vote will be by roll call. Is there any further discussion before we do that? Okay, I'll turn it over to staff.
Councilmember Fay?
Aye.
Francis?
Aye.
Moskowski?
Aye.
DeLuca?
Aye.
Cahill?
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it 5-0. And again, we truly thank you for the partnership with Ehlers and the great work. And
Great, thanks. We love working with you guys, and
Thank you.
thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
thank you, Todd, for
Yep,
being here
you bet.
too. All right, next item of business this evening is consideration of resolution revoking the conditional use permit at 5060 US Highway 12, and I'm going to turn that over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott put together a presentation. I'm going to let him kind of take
I'm
the
going to go to the
lead
podium so I
on-
can actually see the
Yeah.
screen.
Thanks, we'll move those chairs.
Thank you.
Mayor, members of the council, maybe a little taller. So what I'm going to do is, Mark's not here, so I'm going to review the council update that's in the packet. And then I'm going to talk about the recommendations from staff on this. And then we'll go through a recent history of the matter. On June 13th, the city staff made a presentation with regard to the conditional use permit. The property owner, Kurt Kroll, was here along with his friend / customer, Kurt Bjorklund, here today too. And then direction was given to staff to put together a resolution with regards to revocation of the conditional use permit. I do suggest that, and there's no obligation on the council, but I do suggest that that the property owner have a chance to speak again after our presentation. And again, no obligation, but if you want to allow then members of the public to make a presentation too, like we did last time, I would suggest that too. Maple Plain has worked with the owner for over 30 years to find, apply, and develop a sustainable plan to allow the business to fully operate in accordance with applicable requirements. The city has consistently noted that current business and its operation is too robust and does not really fit into the subject property. The owner has not really been able to administer the operation of the business within the limitations created by the physical size and configuration of the property. Maybe what I'll do is I'll go through the history right now, and then we'll talk about the recommendations that we have. The history that I have is coming from the resolution that's attached or in the agenda. This resolution also has the attachment A that was in the last timeline, that was in the last at the last meeting, attached to it with all the exhibits that were there. It was exhibits 1 through 25. So that is part of this resolution. And if you note that in the findings, it's listed out which exhibits support those statements. So, in 1985, the conditional use permit was granted by the City Council. In 2012, the City Council was presented with an option of revoking or amending the conditional use permit. They noted that there had been violations that persisted since 2009. And despite the continued violations that were going on, I should say, in 2014, the city notified the property owners that they were in violation of the CUP, and they had expanded their parking area without permit or approval from the city. So they were, at that point, they were working outside the conditions of the CUP that was granted back in 1985 and had been amended a few times. The city, instead of doing a revocation, they offered an amendment to the conditional use permit. That was in that resolution 15-10-2603. It amended the existing CUP, contained conditions in it which included conditions on parking. There's also a license agreement that was granted for some street parking on Oak Street. So that was 2014. You can go ahead. In 2016, staff conducted monthly inspections of the property and continued to find violations. Now, the biggest violations that were noted were parking. Although some spots may have brought into compliance, other spots were out of compliance, and it seemed to fluctuate, but there's always a continued violation of the conditions of the conditional use permit. And then, so in September of 2016, the council discussed continued violations, and there's also an October 1st, 2016 deadline to make certain improvements that weren't met. The property owner made application again to amend the CUP. A revised site plan was submitted by the property owner that reconfigured and limited parking. City staff recognized that the business, no, I should note that at this time, the staff noted that the business had operated out of compliance with the initial CUP for many years, and that 2015 resolution was approved to help the property owner work with, basically to operate. The property owner came to the city, provided a plan, parking was amended based on that, and said, hey, here is how you can, here's some conditions you have, but let's look at the reality of your business. But, as noted, even with that 2015 resolution, he was still out of compliance with the conditions of the conditional use permit. The city council then again amended the CUP with the current resolution 16-10-10-03. And they also terminated the license agreement for parking on Oak Street. So the conditions of that resolution, the 2016 resolution, are section 9 of the resolution. I'm not going to go through what those are, but those are listed in there. They include limitations on parking. And it also contained penalties for violating the conditions, which imposed a fee for those violations. So the property owner made application again in 2018 for another amendment to the CUP. This one was to add a building or structure for painting. The property owner withdrew that application, and without an amendment to the CUP or any other permit from the city, did build a structure for painting that was not a permitted use. And without that conditional use permit amendment, it's not permitted, and he still did it. So in 2019, staff sent a letter to the property owner again regarding violations of the CUP. And in April 1st, 2021, staff had sent a letter to the property owner regarding the ongoing and continuing violations of the CUP and the current resolution, which is 16-10-10-03. It also imposed a fine, a fee, for violating the conditions of the conditional use permit. So over the course of that year, several letters were sent out that there were still continued violations. It still imposed a fee. And back in November 22nd of 2021, those fees were certified on his taxes. He was provided notice of the hearing. He did not show up at the hearing, and he did not file an objection. And so, of April of this year, staff then sent another letter to the owner of the ongoing and continued violations that persisted on that property. On May 4th, where are we now?
Sorry.
Well, that's okay. On May 4th, city staff scheduled a meeting with the property owner at the property to discuss the violations and in an attempt to work with him to bring him into compliance. He did not show up at that meeting. He did stop by City Hall for a short discussion with the city administrator. On May 4th, he was also provided with a notice from my office with regards to the hearing that was held on the 13th, June 13th, sorry. In that notice, it stated that there was going to be consideration of revoking his conditional use permit, but if he would clean up, basically brought his property into compliance, contacted the city administrator or the city planner prior to that date for an inspection and talked to them about maybe a plan what to do, that the city would consider revoking, or I'm sorry, not having that hearing on the 13th. So June 1st came, and there was no contact from the property owner with regards to with regards to a plan to bring the property into compliance or any action that was seen to bring the property into compliance. So on June 2nd, another letter was sent out by city staff stating that it's not into compliance, and that the June 13th revocation hearing would occur. On June 6th, staff went out to the property, took some pictures, and saw that the violations of the conditional use permit were still ongoing and continued. At the hearing on June 13th, as I said earlier, staff made a presentation to the city council, provided a staff report with a timeline and exhibits. The property owner and his friend and customer did have an opportunity to talk. They made a presentation to the council and provided no further documentation. They stated, or it was stated, that the pandemic made it hard to find workers and comply with the conditions. They asked for additional time to bring the property into compliance. And we're going to go to the pictures next. On June 6th,
Where are my pictures?
well, there's pictures that are attached as Exhibit 25 to the resolution. One of the things that should be known with regards to the violations of the conditions of the conditional use permit is that this has been going on since at least 2009. The city has continued, instead of revoking the conditional use permit, tried to work with the property owner, amended the resolution several times, and at no time, even with the amendments to the conditional use permit with modified conditions, was the property in compliance. It's a long history that are those the pictures? Which ones are those? Okay, it's hard to see those, but. And I took a look, if you take a look at your packet of exhibits, from 2012, the pictures from 2012 of the condition of the property generally look the same here as they did, same in 2012 as they did on June 6th of this year. So, with this long history and continued violations, staff has 3 possible recommendations with regards to this matter. One is to adopt the resolution with no conditions over it, if adopted by the council, which would be an adoption based on the historic and recent ongoing failure of the property owner to comply with all the conditions of the CUP. If that's done, then the conditional use permit is revoked, and the use is no longer permitted on the property. And it should be noted too that because of the zoning change, this has become a lawful non-conforming use. And so if the conditional use permit is revoked, there is no, under city code right now, you couldn't make application for a new conditional use permit. The other option, recommendation, is to find that the applicant has brought the property into compliance with all the standards and determine that no action relating to the revocation of the CUP permit should be taken at this time. Now, this doesn't prevent the council from taking action in the future, but we would be most likely be going through this process again and having the same discussion if there are violations. The third option is that if the council finds the applicant is making progress towards or in compliance with applicable conditions and desires and wants to work with the applicant to establish maybe a sustainable plan moving forward, it's recommended that the city would want to continue work with the owner. What we're looking for is maybe a reduction in the intensity of the allowable use of the property to be considered. That fits into the idea from last council meeting that it's a robust business. It's possible that this robust business has outgrown its spot, and we'd be looking for a modification, and I'll discuss that in a second, to better make this business fit into this property. What we'd be looking for is to convert the conditional use permit into an interim use permit to allow the continued use of the property with a clear termination date in it. And there's, in the memo that Mark put together, there are certain suggested inclusions with regards to any interim use permit for conditions. The city council can make a motion to, so what the council can do is make a motion to approve the resolution, revoking the CUP, but then stay the effectiveness for 60 days on the condition that the application is made for an interim use permit to operate the business consistent with, among other things, direction from the council. So, and if the resolution will become effective if a complete application is not timely made, and once a complete application is made, the effectiveness of the resolution will continue to be stayed during the processing of the application. And if the application is denied or it's withdrawn, then the resolution will become effective. If the application is approved and the conditions of the interim use permit become effective, or to make it effective, not timely met, one of the things that's required on an interim use permit is he has to enter into an interim use agreement. That's under the statute. And and we'll put a time period when that has to be done. If he doesn't meet those conditions, then the resolution for the revocation of the CUP would still be effective and become effective. But if the resolution is approved, or I should say the interim use permit resolution is approved, he meets the conditions for that interim use permit, and they're timely met, then at that point, that interim use permit would take effect over the conditional use permit, and the revocation would take its place. So, in summary, you can adopt the resolution as is. You can decide not to adopt it, or look for a conversion, or you can adopt the resolution, stay its effectiveness to allow time for application to be made to modify the current conditional use permit. And so, and as I said, and are there any questions, first of all? Okay. So, as I said, there's no obligation, but I do suggest that you allow the property owner to have a chance to speak on this again. And again, no obligation, but I do suggest that if there are members of the public, as last time, who would like to speak on this, that you allow them to do it. And I believe that we put the same rules with regards to the public speaking as we did last time. And the mayor can, when it's time for that, can state what those are. So if there's no other questions,
Great.
I'm always available if any questions do come up.
Questions for Attorney Lansman at this time? Anything else from staff? Before we open up?
No, I think I would just note, I think that Kurt's been doing a lot on the property lately, and so I'm really impressed that he's, I mean, it feels like he's kind of finally recognizing that this is a thing, and he's moving forward. And that's one of the reasons that we as staff and obviously we value these businesses in town, but they also, you know, rules are rules, and we open ourselves up for liabilities if we don't have the businesses follow the rules. So seeing that effort, we recognize that. We also, though, have concerns if the current intensity were to remain, that we'd be back where we are today. And so that's kind of where that discussion of this sort of lifeline, you know, interim use permit comes in. You know, we can build in this requirement, you know, substantially less parking out front and on the side is the main thing. Making sure that the paint booth is safe, getting proper permitting and inspections for that, making sure that there's a fire lane so that the property is safe. And that would still leave, I mean, off the top of my head, I want to say something like 45-ish parking spaces in the rear of the building for current clients and staff. So we, you know, are a big proponent of, I guess, of that particular process. Obviously, it does put some onus on the property owner to go through that process and to bring himself into compliance with that permit immediately, and then maintain it. So I did speak with Kurt a little bit about what our recommendations are last week, and certainly I support Scott's idea to let people speak as well.
Okay. Thank you. All right, at this time, we will open up the podium for public regarding Collision Corner. And again, we'll ask that it be 3 minutes, non-repetitive, and respectful. If you'd introduce yourself too each time. Thank you.
Can you turn the lights back up?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'm Kurt Bjorklund, and I'll correct a typo in the record. It's Bjorklund. I have a submission, Kurt has a submission and photographs for compliance I'd like to give to the...
Thank you.
Oh, may I?
Do you need that? Okay.
each one can have a sheet. The photos are self-explanatory, but I'll go through this quickly. I think Kurt has brought the property into compliance, or substantial compliance. I think you got the message 2 weeks ago. And I want to go through the points raised. This is on page 4 of the summary, executive summary dated June 27th.
Would you speak up, please, and move the microphone towards you?
I'm referring to page 4 of the executive summary dated June 27th, 1992, 2022. At the top it says the city approval of the conditional use permit was conditioned upon the following. Parking totaling, I'm on the wrong page, page 5. The following are current and ongoing violations of the CUP. Number 1, there are more vehicles than what is allowed in the areas described in the above chart. All right, parking areas, boundary area, vehicles allowed, 14. There are now 0. Boundary area, on-street parking, number of vehicles allowed, 0. There are currently 0. In front of the building, there are 5 parking spots allowed. There are currently, you can see from the pictures, 2 vehicles in the front of the building. Beside the building on the west side, 0 allowed, and there are 0 there now. Behind the building, in the enclosed area, there's a maximum 48 vehicles 48 vehicles allowed, and they're much less, far fewer than 48. In the on-sale parking area, 10 allowed. There are 0 in that area. The second point, parking and storage are permitted in designated areas only. Parking of vehicles is occurring directly west of the main building. I want to make a distinction between parking and stopping. On Boundary Avenue, on the west side of the building, vendors pull up, and they're going to make delivery. They get out, they make the delivery, they leave. A customer may pull up, drop keys off. They get back in the vehicle and leave. Vehicles can't park there because there are vehicles coming in and out, the customer vehicles coming in and out, and employee vehicles coming in and out. There's no permanent parking on that street, although, yes, I'm...
Sorry, that's the east side.
It's at the east side, I'm sorry.
The west side of the building is just directly to the building where there's supposed to be a fire lane.
Correct. So I'm sorry, I'm talking about the west side, the east side of the building, Boundary Avenue. Now, there are pictures there of freshly repainted, restriped parking areas. There are no vehicles in the parking area. These pictures were taken at 5 this afternoon. So I want to make it clear, though, on the east side of the building, people don't park there for any length of time because they can't. A vendor may pull up and stop, and then they leave. Anyone who leaves their vehicle there, an employee comes out and says, you got to move it because we're moving vehicles around. So I think it's the city could say there's no stopping as well. And we could put signage up saying no parking, no stopping, but it doesn't say no stopping. And that hasn't been the rule. Going back to parking of vehicles is occurring directly west of the main building. You'll see in the photographs there are no vehicles parked on the west side of the building. Not all required landscaping has been installed or maintained, point 4. Collision Corner has landscaping on order. Couldn't get it done in 2 weeks.
We're going to try it again. We did plant everything. It died. We have invoices proving that we actually planted in that area, and it all died in the last few years.
Point 5 is the required rear storage and parking areas have not been striped for approval of site plan. I don't want to go into detail on this, but it's true, it hasn't been striped, but you look at the site plan and it doesn't correspond to how vehicles would normally be parked. They're 90 degrees out of skew, and it seems odd to me that you'd want to even have stripes in that area because you need flexibility to move vehicles around. It's a work area. So I'm not sure what the plan was getting it in the first place, and Kurt would be open to redoing that in a way that is consistent with the business and the needs of the community. Number 5, building and street lighting pursuant to the site plan. I believe the building is in compliance with the lighting required. I have no understanding that they're out of compliance. 6, no parking signage. You can see in the photographs that's been remedied. Okay, provide emergency vehicle public safety access designated on the site plan. You can see in the photographs that that lane has now been there. It's a clear lane. Talking with Captain McCoy on the way in, we wanted to know about what was actually required for the building, and he responded by saying, tell the council that when we responded to a fire alarm on the property, we did not need to enter the premises to take care of the issue. He wouldn't say there's no fire lane needed, but he didn't need one. Blacktop driveway for the for sale area for the used car lot. You can see from the picture that that site is being prepped for blacktopping. Couldn't be accomplished in 2 weeks, but it's scheduled and will be done promptly. And then you can see the striping done in front of the building and the side of the building. Freshly done. We also, would like to make a point that there are approximately 12 employees at Collision Corner. 2 of them are elderly. If they lose their jobs, it's unlikely they can find a job like this in the community. At this kind of pay, there's also 10 other employees, mechanics, specialists who are, trying to support families and are single income families. I'd like to make one other point too. I thought it was extraordinary that Kurt filed a data request with the city, and it is on page, the response is on page, that's 1 of 1. It's after a page marked 7. But I believe it's from you. No. And Kurt asked in a data request, he would like to see any community complaints regarding Collision Corner. And the response at the bottom is no data matching this description could be found in city records. There are no records of any complaints on Collision Corner. None. Now tonight you heard 2 people get up and volunteer how valuable Collision Corner was for the community, and you can count me as number 3. You've heard people on the record support Collision Corner and want to keep it open. We've seen no official complaints about the business, and the city can't produce any. We would like, 2 weeks ago we were asked to get in substantial compliance, or get in compliance. And we think we are there in most respects 100%, and will be in 100% compliance within 2 or 3 weeks. And we would like the CUP to remain in place and continue business as usual. Kurt is open to modifications and of the business plan. I thought what was being proposed in the interim use permit was, I'll say, objectionable in 2 respects. One is you're shutting down his business in two ways. No used car sales. And second, you want him to remove, I'll call it his restoration business, or his valuable used parts business, by removing old vehicles from the property. I don't know. It's not illegal to have a car that's hasn't been registered or is old on private property. And it's surprising to me that the city would even care. But the city, it seems to me, is opening up a can of worms for it. So are they going to come by every week and inspect the property to make sure that no old junkers have been dropped off at the property? Would you want to? Is that a good use of resources? Even apart from the economic issue. I think Kurt understands it. He doesn't want the business to be a blight in the community visually. But that can be addressed without shutting the business down. It can be addressed with landscaping, it can be addressed with higher walls, stricter parking. What I might suggest is a kind of compliance plan where Kurt has to file, for example, weekly, every night, a vehicle count. Send it to someone to make sure he's in compliance. Regarding other aspects that concern the intensity of the business and the size, make sure, weekly reports, monthly reports regarding, number of vehicles running through the property, visual aspects, a confirmation that landscaping's been put in. Make him do some work to keep it front of his mind, to make sure that he's complying with the council's directives. But I don't think the community wants this business shut down. I really don't. And I don't think you want to put people out of work either. So I'll leave it at that unless there are questions. Or Kurt, do you have any comment?
We're good.
Thank you, Mr. Bjorklund and Mr. Kroll. Is there anyone else here to speak on behalf of Cleveland Corner?
Hi, I'm Cindy Derland. I'm a 35-year resident of Independence. I don't really know Kurt, except in an emergency situation, I've run up there for my boat, for my cars, my kids. I'm going to tell you, Orono, Long Lake, Independence, he is our guy. He is where we go. He is our trusted business. And I just read that article that came today to my house in the local paper, and I just was so sick to my stomach. I've been a business owner through all this COVID stuff. How can you even think to be so punitive? We need him. You're wrong. Your small town appears to be small-minded and unimaginative. And I'm telling you, we can get hundreds of people just going up to that school that will picket if you would decide to close him down. There will be so much community outrage. Get a grip.
Rob Severs here. Do you guys do business with Kurt? Have you? Or do you? Anyone going to answer? Does Maple get their car fixed there? Their city vehicles? You're putting a good guy out of business. And you guys are trying to put this guy out of business for stupid reasons. And I'm a business owner. I've been through this with the City of Independence. I've watched this and everything. And what you guys are doing to this town, there's another business that is for sale that the guy is about to sue the city because you guys are taking his rights of commercial away from him and downgrading his business. He's in talk with a lawyer. We looked at buying this building. And what you guys are right here, I know you guys are all clients of Kurt's. You guys are conflict to interest to the vote to Mr. Kroll. And it's a statute in the book that anybody that does part, business or anything, cannot have a vote against someone. Thank you.
Anybody else that is
My name is Megan Brinkman. I work for Kurt. I've worked for Kurt for a year and a half, and I came from a very small town, like Maple Plain. There's something important about being in a small community and taking care of one another. And there are times where I will start in the morning and I will open up, and we got cars because people have broken down. They've been in car accidents. Their cars have stalled. There's been vandalism to cars, and they go to Kurt because he's local. He's here. Between Delano and Long Lake, there's nowhere to go for a flat tire. We've had calls from Holiday gas station because either their hose for air has been stolen, it's damaged, and there's a car that has a flat tire. Can you come and tow this vehicle to Collision Corner? Can I get my tire fixed? We do it because we're a small town. We're here to help one another. I understand there's a compliancy issue. I get that. But I don't know how we can control how many cars are potentially dropped off on a Friday night because of car accidents, tires. There needs to be some understanding with that. And again, we're a small town. We need to band together. We need to work together to be able to keep what we have. And we don't have very many things in this town. We don't, and it's sad. And to lose a company with 12 employees, including myself, and I'm going to be selfish, I will have to look for a new job. Is that hard? It is, because this economy isn't what it was before COVID, and I get that. But we need to work together in order to sustain and keep what we have in this community. Because the more we lose, it's going to be harder to get this stuff in. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
I just wanted to say, her example was excellent because I am someone that does that I have driven into the parking lot after it's closed, gotten out of my car, gotten picked up and gone home. And, you know, I mean, one day I called and said, oh, you saw my car there, because it's right in front. I mean, I know I'm not allowed to park there, but I made it all the way from the Guthrie after launching myself over a curb. So, I mean, I couldn't turn left with my steering wheel, so there I was. So that happens all the time. Even my sister who lives in Minneapolis has done it. So he can't control us.
Thank you, Ms. McCabe. Right. Is there anyone else? Kurt, did you want? You're good. You're good? Okay. All right. That will end the public comment time, and I'll turn it back over to staff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor, members of the council. We, as I stated before, the city has, over the years, for at least 13 years, or more, has attempted to work with the property owner to bring the property into compliance with the conditional use permit conditions. Those, sorry, I'll get closer to the mic. Those conditions have continued to be, over those years, be out of compliance and not met. And at this point right now, through the direction of council, we've presented you with a resolution. There's recommendations out there, but the council can take whatever action that it wants with regards to this.
Scott, I have a question.
Yes.
I certainly like an idea of a hybrid model. Clarissa referred to it as a lifeline because tough decision to pull the rug out from someone. But instead of just amending the CUP, you've amended it, but you want to revoke the CUP and turn it into an interim permit. Now, my understanding is the difference between an interim and a conditional is that it's period certain, meaning there is a deadline to it. So specifically what happens after this deadline in the interim permit?
Well, there's several options. One would be at the end of the interim use permit, the permit's done. That's option one. Another option would be that, think of it like a lease with options at the end if you're in compliance, so it can continue on. So we hit the end, say if it's 5 years. You hit the end of the 5-year period or close to it. If he's in compliance, then and the presentation's made to the council can decide, yeah, we'll extend that out for another period of time. So it just puts it at little increments as you go along. That's another option out there. Or there's also the option to do it as a conditional use permit, and to allow that use to continue on without that check, every so often.
Well, but if all we're trying to seek is compliance to the conditions that are established, whether it's interim or conditional, what's the difference?
Well, there are a couple of things too, remember, is that with the zoning change that occurred to this property, that the use, if he would come today, make application for a conditional use permit, he wouldn't be able to do it because it's not a permitted use, okay? And so what you're faced with is a situation where you have a legal non-conforming use. The intent of a zoning change is to bring it, when there's changes, is to bring those reason you do the zoning changes is to bring the properties into compliance with the new zone. And as we know, there is no amortization of non-conforming uses, so they become legal non-conforming uses. And since we're at a situation right now where, based on the evidence presented, there's a possibility for a revocation of the conditional use permit. If we did revoke it, then he would not be allowed to make a new application. And so think of it as kind of a hybrid for the city too, because we're allowing this use we allow the use to continue because we're still trying to work with the property owner as we have for years. And we convert it to an IUP, and that would, if he is in compliance, it'll eventually bring the property into conformity with the zoning code. So it's kind of it's not only is it a hybrid for the property owner and kind of a middle ground, it also works within the intent of why the zoning was changed.
In the conditions set forth in this third option, this hybrid option, this interim option, are those staff conditions that were put together to best utilize the property?
Correct. Those are recommendations from staff with regards to lessen the burden on the property with regards to the use. But this, it's ultimately up to the council to decide what conditions they would like to have in there. And we're not saying that those conditions have to be determined right now, because remember, there's a 60-day period for application, or whatever time period you choose, but for application to be made. And at that time, then there can be discussion of what those conditions should be. These are just recommended. Yes.
I was just going to add, sorry, whenever you were
ready. These are staff recommended conditions to help you understand what could be in that interim use permit. But I'm assuming, I try not to assume, but assuming that the final product, if we went down that road and the interim use permit was approved, it would differ, maybe. I mean, it's a possibility. Yes.
I was just going to add, CUP versus IUP. We were looking at it. I think Mark's original thought process was it gives us a little bit more leverage, and it's easier. It would be easier. So this whole process has taken a lot of time, a lot of staff time, a lot of money, consultants. It's a lot. So by moving to an IUP and kind of forcing that review process, and there's not a given that this thing maintains itself indefinitely, it forces the property owner to become compliant. It gives us more leverage by making it easier to remove the use.
A date wasn't given. What would staff recommend as a date on an interim? use permit?
I think the initial number we were tossing around was 5 years, but
5 years?
yeah, with maybe a 1 or 3 year renewal. I mean, I think we haven't really talked about it that much as far as time, and obviously, I mean, it's an application process. You guys would have input. Obviously, the property owner would make requests as far as what conditions would work for his business. Staff would make recommendations, so we'd all be kind of working together to figure out what would be best.
And Councilmember Fay, and members of the council, I should state, one of the differences between a conditional use permit and an interim use permit, besides a sunset period, or however, you know, we said there could be options to renew, there's also a requirement that the property owner enter into an agreement with the city with regards to those conditions that are in there. So, as opposed to having a resolution and going through the process, you're going through, it's in some respects a contractual claim that they're entering into and agreeing to these terms there. So it provides us, and if they agree to it, the terms that are in there, it provides us, the city, as we said, that leverage with regards to not only the end period or possible sunset, but also contractual terms that are in there that can be enforced. But again, if the way this works out too, and Clarissa brought this up, that if he's not in compliance and we have a sunset, and the idea to continue on is that you have to be in compliance, the IUP itself, the interim use permit, would terminate. You wouldn't be going through, in essence, a revocation hearing. It would just be a discussion of whether or not to grant the extension. I mean,
I have something to say. Can I say something or ask you guys
that's
a
up to
question?
you, Mayor. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Am I able to do that?
do you want to continue
Hold on
continue to have
1
discussion, and then maybe have them come back up after your questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Did you get
yeah.
clarification that you were
Yeah.
looking for on that?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions about IUP versus CUP?
Clarissa or Scott, can you explain how the interim use would ensure, let me back up. Kurt, you've made nice progress in the last 2 weeks. Great work. How does the interim use, though, finish compliance? It is not in compliance this moment in time. Right today, as it sits right now, the property is not in compliance with the CUP. How would it ensure that, and how would it maintain compliance?
an interim use permit with conditions is no different than a conditional use permit with conditions, except there's a sunset. So in that, say if it's a 5-year period, right? And if it's out of compliance, you still can revoke it. You don't have to wait till the end of the 5-year period. But there is no guarantee that there will be compliance. It's the same. It's a permitted use with conditions. Same thing like the conditional use permit. Same thing that's been going on since at least 2009, where there's conditions that haven't been met, and there's continued discussion with council, staff, consultants, amendments to try to get us to bring the property into compliance. So to answer the question, it is not a mechanism to say, okay, now he's going to do it. He still has to comply with those conditions, whatever they are.
Any other questions for staff? All right, Mr. Cole.
Okay, you guys were mentioning the zoning was changed on that commercial property down there. What was changed on it? And when was it changed?
Mixed use.
If I could take a stab, I
Yeah.
want to say it was around 2012-ish that the mixed use areas were adopted. Does that sound about right?
All right.
Were the property owners notified of that?
None of us were here then, but I would imagine they were.
There is a process. I believe we
And I think
we
we'd have
looked
to have
into
a
this
hearing too,
about
not?
the other property. I'm not positive that the Bud Avenue and the Gateway are the same time frame and such, but there is a process for notifications on this type of issues. And I believe we
Correct.
did double
Any zoning change requires notice in a public hearing.
So it would have been in the newspaper and invites.
And
sent to
there
people
should have been
within it.
notice. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't tell. I mean, it's, at this point, it's so long ago, but it is the zoning. And like I said before, with your conditional use permit, even though the zoning was changed, it doesn't change that it became a lawful non-conforming use, meaning it may be out of compliance with the current zone that it was changed to, but you're still allowed to operate under the conditional use permit.
Right.
So that's not, we're not here today because of the fact that it was changed, the zoning was changed, we're just here because you have a conditional use permit, there's conditions, and it's consideration of whether or not you're out of compliance with those conditions.
But when I bought the property, the zoning was better, it was more beneficial to me than it is today because of the change. That's what I'm asking.
I don't know whether it's
It
beneficial.
sounds like it, on what you're saying, is that I wouldn't even, that property wouldn't even conform to a body shop with today's zoning, am I correct?
Under the current zoning, the type of use you have is not a permitted use at all. However, simply because there's a zoning change, doesn't change the right to use the property under the use that you had before, which was that conditional use permit.
Like I'm grandfathered in on that right now.
Right, yeah.
Right, so losing my conditional use permit right now and getting the new one that you're talking about that has a sunset of 5 years, whatever you said, because it's a little confusing. You've said a lot and it's been really confusing, to be honest with you. So this would be, I'd be putting myself in a worse position without fighting to keep this conditional permit intact the way it is. Am I correct?
I can't tell you whether or not what position you're in, or whether it's a worse position or not.
Well-
I'll just tell you that the idea is you have a conditional use permit. If the city makes a determination that they want to adopt the resolution revoking your conditional use permit, and it's adopted, then you lose your right to use the property. And I think the idea here is we're trying to, as the city administrator indicated, find that middle ground to throw I think the word was a lifeline, so that if there is going to be an adoption of the resolution, maybe there's something that we can convert it into, or something we can do so you can continue to operate the business. But whether or not that's better for you or not, I don't really know.
What I'm getting at, I'm going to back it up. When I bought the property in 84 or 5, whatever year it was, the commercial zoning is different today than it was back then. Am I correct? Because there was a change back in 2012, but none of you were here. And Deb just came up to me and said that she's been with me for 20-some years. She's never seen anything come across our desk saying that there's going to be a change in our commercial property, the zoning.
It shows up on your property tax statement as
Right.
mixed use, has for 10 years.
Really don't look at the property tax statement every time it's being paid, because it's usually escrowed. You just see that it's been paid and it's off. So what I'm getting at is that, what is the property zoning now? If it's not zoned for a body shop use, what is the zoning for that piece of property?
Well, it's mixed use, but you're legal non-conforming right now, which allows you to run the body shop in the mixed-use district. And the city council, whether it's an interim use permit or a conditional use permit, at any time, we have the option to revoke it if you're not following the conditions. Am I correct?
Correct.
No, I understand that.
And also
Okay.
too, if you ceased operations, you were done.
Yeah.
Working there, somebody could not then, and it was considered to be an there's analysis with it, but
Yep.
say if it was you abandoned the use and no
Yep.
longer, then that use couldn't come back again. I mean, but that has nothing to do with yourself operating the business itself. The zoning
So what I'm
changed.
saying, there's more limitations today on the property than there was when I bought it, because the zoning got changed back in 2012.
No.
No,
because you.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
I just wanted to make sure I heard that.
Right, because you bought it with a condition and got a conditional use permit.
Right.
And
So if I sold the property, another body shop could come in there, get a conditional use permit, and still operate a body shop.
Yeah,
Yes.
this isn't.
No. There we go.
The underlying zoning
That's what I'm
currently
getting at.
Okay,
does
that-
not allow for an auto body shop.
Okay.
No.
That's what I want to clarify. That's why I came back up here. Thank you.
Yeah. And I do apologize for not having the history about the zoning involved. But it is, as stated, it's a allowed use under the conditional use permit with conditions, and that's why we're here today. One of the reasons we looked at, we called it modifying the conditional use permit, whether it's by amendment or through the IUP modifying to that, is so we can continue, you have to continue to have that use there, so that, because if it goes away, then it's no longer a permitted use and under the zoning. You have to make a zoning change at that point to the whole zone to allow it.
Is there a fourth option on the table here? And that fourth option would be a simple table of this discussion for 2 weeks or a month to give Kurt time to not just work towards compliance, but to do that and work with staff to get completely in compliance, not working towards it, not trying to fit something in. Is that an option?
That is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would, Scott's
Well, I was
about to
gonna say,
say,
if
of course, anything's an
Yeah,
option.
it's an option, but it depends what the council wants to do. I mean, obviously, we put forward just recommendations. If the council wants to say, okay, we're gonna put this on, we're gonna table this and then have it come back in, 30 days and see where it's at, that can be done too. At a certain point, if you continue to table, but if it's, I would suggest at a certain point, looking whether to adopt or not adopt it, but I don't see any issue, if that's what the council decides what to do, is to table this matter and then look at it in 30 days.
I mean, my
Or 20, or
rationale
2
of
weeks or
thinking
whatever.
here is, we have not seen full compliance. We've seen great steps towards compliance. And to see whether this business can run with being in compliance, we're gonna be able to see that within a short period of time here. 5 o'clock tonight, we had nice pictures. So it look like 5 o'clock tomorrow, or a week from now, a month, 30 days from now.
Councilmember DeLuca, the second bullet point, which states that the council found the applicant to be in compliance and will allow this to continue, that doesn't keep the council from revoking it in the future. So all you're saying is stay this for 15 days or 30 days or something, and looking at option 2 as a, okay, then the next question would be, there's some additional conditions that were incorporated into option 3, which is the interim, like the cars out on Highway 12 frontage, which I personally agree to. The parking on Boundary, which seems to be a cluster, I kind of agree to that. What happens behind the fencing as far as cars and things of that nature, as long as it's not, visible. I mean, these are conditions. So there's some conditions that staff incorporated into this for a reason, but this is really today, was really the first time we're seeing these, and I'd like to know the history between you and Mark and Clarissa as far as how you came up with those additional conditions. I'm not opposed to them, but I mean, maybe it's maybe it's the hybrid, maybe it's amending with additional conditions. But I don't know. Is that option 2 or is that option 3? I clearly don't understand what the interim is, because they both can be both can be revoked at any time if they're not meeting the conditions.
Clarissa's trying to speak.
Oh.
I don't know if you recall, I actually suggested changing the CUP last year to make it easier to administer and to remove some of that frontage parking.
Okay.
So I had mentioned the no parking on boundary. They're always going to park on boundary because it doesn't say no parking. So we then now this spring changed that to no parking. Now we're not getting any no parking on boundary. If you remove the front for sale lot, Highway 12 is going to look a lot better. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
there are conditions that I've been thinking about trying to administer this thing for the last year, that will just make the outside curb appeal of the property significantly better and just make it easier from an administration standpoint. So those are my goals.
Got it.
Make it look better from the outside. I don't really care either what happens behind, as long as there's not like environmental seals or something, right? And that it's safe, right? So we, revisit the fire lane and whatnot. Also, the amount of cars in back determines how many cars get stacked up front. So if there are 30 of the cars in back are just junk vehicles sitting there for parts, well, that forces those 30 visitors or whoever to come out to the front, and that's when it starts looking junky from the street front. So those were my pretty straightforward reasoning. And again, IUP versus CUP. Well, yes and no. I don't know. Like to me, the sunset and the forcing to reapply, the fact that it's a contractual obligation, those aren't nothing things. Those can be very helpful in an enforcement procedure.
Clarissa, if a IUP had a sunset of, say, 6 months from now, would council then be able to extend it at the end of the 6 months at our discretion? What if we put a short window on that?
Why?
Maintain compliance and we'll continue to extend it. Don't, and it naturally just sunsets and goes away.
I mean, with regards to the conditions of the interim use permit, and the length of it, that would be, council discretion, and then remember, it's also an agreement, so it has to be agreed upon with the property owner. So typically, interim use permits don't come in this type of situation. It's somebody makes an application for an interim use permit for a use, and then there's some agreement between the city and the property owner. But here we have a situation where the city has a revocation resolution that we talked about being effective as being stayed, and so that's always there. And so you could do 6 months. I haven't, because the situation's a little bit unique, I haven't seen 6 months, but could you do it? The answer is yes.
I guess I'd look to staff here to tell us if our objective here is compliance and continued compliance. What's the best mechanism to do that, to make it look as good as we can on the outside? And if, Clarissa, you're saying the interim use is the best mechanism that we can give staff to do that, and Kurt's willing to enter into this agreement with you over the front of the building, the looks of the thing, the keeping the safety lanes open, not parking on boundary, et cetera, that staff work out with him, I'm fine with that then. It keeps his business running, and it provides us what we need, which is compliance and continued compliance. The efforts that have been made in the last couple of weeks would need to continue and have a commitment, or the risk of us revoking that at any time.
Yeah, and some of those conditions and the timing, we certainly haven't, we came up with the idea, obviously, after the last hearing, though some of those concepts have certainly been floating around in my head. So we would definitely go through the process of kind of brainstorming and vetting and whatever all of those conditions are in the end.
Mayor,
We've
may I
had-
make a comment?
Yes.
Quickly. I mentioned a compliance program under the CUP. Commissioner DeLuca, that the agreement can exist now between Kurt and the city. It doesn't have to be an interim agreement. My own bias at years of working in bank regulation is to try and keep things as simple as possible, but keep things as enforceable as possible. So you're talking about a new set of documents, an interim agreement, and in my way of thinking, you've reversed the bias. So Kurt shouldn't have to worry about, in 6 months or 5 years, whether the interim use agreement won't be renewed and he's out of business. In a sense, I look at it as a burden of proof issue. He's got to prove he's in compliance at the end of that 5 years or 6 months. The way it works now is that I think the city council has to come and say you're not in compliance, and here's the proof. And I think that's normally how it works. Now, he's made a tremendous effort in the last 2 weeks at the request of the city to get in compliance, and I'm not going to say that I'm going to make sure he continues, because it's not my job, but I am. And he can do this, and you can put an agreement in place, negotiate it with the city, because I think that the current use permit needs some tightening in some respects and loosening in others. But it can be brought up to date to make this city council's desires for the city current and in place. And I think that's the most efficient way to go about this. And I think you'll get Kurt cooperating and making this business the asset you want it to be.
Thank you, Mr. Bjorklund.
Madam Mayor,
yes.
just real quick. I just say, in the process here, I think, as we mentioned, the idea here is give them 60 days, make an application, and then the council and if it's complete, then the council can make a decision on the conditions, even talk about what may be in the agreement, because the agreement would have to be approved by the council too. But in there, we've never talked about who has the burden of proof with regards to this. The city, with regards to whether or not there's a violation, wouldn't be any different than it is today. Our standard is it would be a rational basis for a violation. So I wouldn't imagine it being any different. So we're not looking for a burden shifting at all. If he's not in compliance, say the 5 years comes and the city decides it's not going to take any, or 6 months, the city's not going to take any action within that time period. And then it comes, and we set up whatever the process is, and like we are today, and the city looks at it, it would exercise its discretion of whether or not, on a rational basis, on whether or not there is a violation of it and whether or not it should continue. I mean, but those are the things that we worked out as we go on. We don't have that. We know the big picture, but we don't have the probably the fine detail at this point. It's not until an application is made. I don't think we want to put the time into that either.
Thank you, Mr. Landsman. So we've had a lot of information for everyone, and people are digesting. As we've heard, there's been good dialogue and questions. We've been meeting since 5:30 tonight. I still don't feel like I'm getting consensus from the group. I'm not hearing a motion come before us. So I'm wondering if last month Mr. Crowell came before us, he asked for 4 weeks, 30 days. We gave him 2 weeks. We saw a substantial movement in 2 weeks, more than I've seen since being on council. Are we comfortable with, checking in again on the 11th at the workshop and then taking action on the 4th Monday in July, the 25th? Or is there someone who feels like they're ready to make a motion?
But for some reason, in this third option, these new conditions.
Are you on the memo, the recommendations?
Yeah, page
Okay.
101 of the packet. correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is allow Collision Corner to continue to make the modifications to meet the conditions of the existing 6-year-old conditional use permit. Whereas staff has added some additional conditions that I don't think I'm not in favor of. I'm clearly in favor of some of these to clean up
Right.
as well.
I understand that, but I'm saying it's 9:15. I don't want to be making any rash decisions because people aren't ready. Do
Okay,
you
but if
feel
one of
like-
the conditions is that there is no parking on Highway 12, and he spends thousands of dollars blacktopping the frontage on Highway 12, and we say, no parking on Highway 12, we've just asked him to waste a lot of money on blacktop. No parking along boundary, or in the striped on boundary, that's easy. But if we're asking him to, the condition right now is that he's allowed cars on Highway 12 frontage. And for some reason, and I agree, I don't think they should be there. Paved or not paved. So, I don't know, do we allow him 2 more weeks to, his narrative here said of a death in the family or something like that,
Number 6.
delayed to a death in the family.
John, I don't want to interrupt, but the pavers are going to be there first thing tomorrow morning. There was a death, his grandson died. It's unexpectedly Wednesday morning, I got a phone call at 5:30. So yes, the pavers are going to be there. I got to stop them if they're not, if this isn't going to go.
How do you handle that, Scott?
Well, what discussion from the mayor was, is this tabled for 4 weeks? One of the things that this would allow is for probably Mark to come back to provide some more insight with regard to if that's needed, because I think there were some questions about some of those conditions that were put together in his memo. And also allow the council to have some more thought into this. Whether or not, it doesn't change the fact that these were conditions that have been around for 6 years, and they haven't been met, and it happens to be, since the last meeting, I don't want to say the word, it was some haste, bringing things into compliance. Whether or not that money would have been spent 5 years ago versus now, it's a condition, of the conditional use
Nothing's been
permit.
changed. We've been dealing with the same conditions for years.
Mhm.
What's changed, in my opinion, is the amount of work I've seen in the last 2 weeks, because I have not seen that in my time before.
I think John makes a valid point here about those extra conditions. Those are good extra conditions to have. And how could we guide the business owner at this point to say, look at those additional points, take your 2 weeks to get things figured out. I like those points that are on there.
On page 101.
Yep.
So we stay it for a period of time while Collision Corner works with staff to make amendments to this.
And if the mechanism is an IUP.
And whether it's an IUP
Fine.
or a CUP, whatever works. And then if it's not drafted, agreed to, and approved by city council within a period of time, we revoke the existing CUP. So, which I think is kind of what you're talking about in this third bullet point. And we'll turn it back over to staff to draft the conditions, the modifications, the amendments to a new IUP. Is that fair?
So I just want to make sure that you're a little bit different, but in the same vein, because originally the recommendation was to approve the resolution, stay the effectiveness, and then the resolution's there, so then they can go through the process. I think what you're saying is, what if it's tabled for a certain time period?
While
to allow the discussions to start happening with staff. So then maybe that's a good middle ground, maybe, because if the property owner is spending money to try to come in compliance, maybe it's a good time to finally talk with staff to come up with a plan on what could be done. One of the things that I originally stated in my notice I sent for this hearing is contact Mark and Clarissa. And at the last meeting on the 13th, I said contact Mark and Clarissa, and I don't know, there is some contact, but it feels, from the understanding I'm having, is that there's no plans being put forward or time frames to at least to staff. Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, I mean, he was kind of at the last minute pushing, and it felt like this, tonight is the deadline, and this was what he was trying to get.
Yeah.
I guess while I appreciate those efforts, I also, after 15 years of enforcement of a CUP, I question whether he can stay in compliance, which is why staff is recommending the changes.
Yes.
Is from an administrative standpoint, this current setup is extremely expensive.
It's similar to what's been happening in 2015 and 2016, where there's amendments to the governing document to try and working with the property owner to say, hey, here's what we want, and here's what kind of can work for you. And that's it. It's as opposed to just a revocation. It's still the decision of let's look for some form of an amendment with those conditions.
May I know, just simply to take care of this point about blacktopping, isn't the simple solution just to say, to suspend that requirement for 2 weeks? In other words, the fact that Kurt doesn't blacktop tomorrow morning won't be considered as non-compliance if the eventual decision of the city council is not to sell used cars. That's all.
I think it's clear that we have a business that is loved by the community we want to continue, which is why I am in favor of working with them on a new agreement, because I think the business has changed. I think we want them to be successful. And I think we've seen the effectiveness of having a deadline. And so I would even be open to 90 days, because I know sometimes these agreements could take a little longer. I don't know if that's too long for staff, but I think I would be supportive of option 3 and staying it for 60 to 90 days.
Well, and I should state that we're not working. We wouldn't be working out the agreement at this point. It would give them a time period to make application to the city.
But that application would involve the agreement.
Right, but the application would be but we're asking for just a complete application within that time period, and then we can process it through the normal 1599 time periods that we have.
Because I think that gives the property owner another opportunity to tell us what changes, he's willing to do and what work for his business.
Scott, the way you just said that, though, that's giving him 60 days to file an application and then begin working through it. That could take another 60 to 90 days? I'm not ready to sit here and commit to non-compliance for another 3 to 4 or 5 months. If a deadline is needed, work it out with staff in the next 60 days, bring it back, or we'll revoke the conditional use permit.
Well, one of the things that you could do is, because the motion to approve could be motion to approve the resolution effectiveness for 60 days to allow them to get the application in, and that he asked, and if these pictures are enough to show that it's at this point compliant enough that it has to be maintained in that 60-day period, or through the whole process like this, or we could then revoke the resolution. You can still have that there. Well, I'm not suggesting that during this time period that the property owner and the business is allowed to then continue to violate it. The idea is, if he's brought it into compliance, what's substantial compliance, if that's what it is, I don't know yet. There hasn't been that inspection of the property, but let's assume that it is. We'd want it to stay in the compliance while we're working through this process.
And I think that's where I prefer the interim use, to staff's point. I think having that, going forward, having that use sunset when this business is no longer operational there, I think, is beneficial.
But I also think, I agree with Mike in that we don't want to be putting the final touches in this in January, December. I mean,
I'm fine with the 60 days too.
Okay.
But if that works for staff and gives the owner enough time to make it apply and give an agreement.
So just to be clear, 60. So there's a 60-day window for planning applications typically. Because between what's required, right? 60-ish.
That would be a Mark question.
So
But,
what you're
you-
suggesting
you-
essentially this, and I didn't do the math in my head as I was reading this either. So 60 days plus another 60
Oh,
days.
I see what you're
so
saying.
we're 120 days
1599. There's
3 months or so.
It's 60 days, because we have a certain time period where the
4
city has to
months,
make a
I guess.
decision. You can make, if you get that clean application, you can make, and you have enough to make your decision, you can approve that, everything under the 60 days.
Scott, I just shared a couple minutes ago, I
Yeah.
am not willing to look at 60 plus 60
Yeah.
plus a
Yeah.
bunch of
No,
other
because
ones.
we're at 4 months.
You have 60 days
Yeah.
to work with the applicant and bring back to this council new set of conditions that he can live with, that you can live with, or we revoke the conditional use permit. There's now a deadline, 2 months from tonight, or whenever the August meeting is.
That's what option 3 is.
Essentially,
Yeah.
yes. Don't complicate it any more than that.
No, I'm going to.
Lawyers.
Because, since this is zoning, any changes to, we have to follow city code with regards to an amendment of this type, which once, we work out the details, but you still have to go through the public hearing and the planning commission, and then approval by the city council. So that's still.
But that's for
in
the
process.
amendment to the CUP, right? Not for the new interim?
No, that's both.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's an amendment to the CUP or a modification to an IUP, it's still going to it's still zoning and still going to require, under city code, require public hearing from the planning commission and then approval by a meeting in front of the city council. There are some time periods there that have to be done.
But given that, we should theoretically, if he's got 30 days to make up, well, let's see, I'd have to get the hearing timing down, but he's essentially got 3 weeks to pull things together and us to make, so that we can get notifications out for the planning commission in August, which puts us at the August council meeting, which is roughly 60 days from today. I feel like we could get that done.
Some work between Kurt, you and staff in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
What am I out of compliance with right now, besides the paving? A strike for the safety zone? The paving was out of my control. But what am I out of compliance with? I guess I want that on record too. Today.
We haven't been down.
I think the idea, or what I hear is not the fact that what happened between the last meeting and right now. It's historically the changes, the modifications, to the conditions, and the non-compliance, and the concern with the history that's involved. The concern of the city council, from what I understand, is that what I've heard is that there's no guarantee at this point that just because you may have brought it in compliance as of, we don't even know if it's compliance, but say if it is compliance as of right now, even if it is, nothing there that says it would be brought out of compliance. I think there was somebody from the public that said that she admitted that she parked on the street, which is against the CUP conditions. And I'm assuming that could continue, and so it's a historical aspect of it. And so
But they come in broken, so they park, she didn't say in the street, she parked in the parking lot where there wasn't no parking. And she broke down there, and that's where she left the keys. That's what she said. But what is that, how's that gonna stop with a different conditional use permit or new, whatever you're trying to write up? How is that gonna stop it from people doing that at night, coming in limping, or a tow truck dropping it wherever it drops it? And then you guys seeing it and thinking I'm out of compliance again, where we didn't get it moved fast enough, or?
Well, I think this is part of the problem with these, with you meeting the conditions, is that they are conditions. You are responsible for them. It's your business, and if you're out of compliance, you're out of compliance.
I understand. Thank you.
City council could find that the applicant is making progress towards, I think we're in agreement, or is in compliance, and desires to work with the applicant, I think we are, to establish a sustainable plan moving forward. It is recommended that should the city want to continue to work with the owner, which I think we do, a reduction in intensity of the allowable use of the property be considered, which I think is only fair. So what do we have to do to move forward on this option 3? Does a motion have to be made?
I'm sorry, which option? Are you looking at my
Or this
summary?
third bullet point? Yes.
On
I'm sorry.
Mark.
It might have been Mark's.
On page 9.
I think it's Mark's.
You mean the
on
101? The second option we said they're working with it. Oh, I see what you're saying. This is the third option. Well, yeah, motion. I mean, there's two ways of handling it. Now that I've heard from the council, is one, approve the resolution, and then it's approved, but its effectiveness has stayed, and then you wouldn't be then. And then there's conditions on that approval which are listed out here, or whatever conditions you want, or you could table the matter to allow staff to work through these issues, whether it's 30 days. I mean, it sounded like, well, how many days were you thinking to get it onto August? Like 30 days? Is a table for 30 days to allow?
Well, I think I'm not sure it's quite as clean if you don't approve the resolution.
Well,
with
approving the
and
resolution would be
stay
the
it.
cleanest, because you've made a decision that it's out of compliance or historically out of compliance. And then you have conditions on that, okay, we have this, it's been approved, but now if he has the process involved with regards to the obligations to meet in order so that it wouldn't go into effect.
If we go to page 99, if we look at bullet point number 3, I'll move that we approve resolution 220 with the revoking the conditional use permit subject to the conditions that are listed here, with one modification, that the effectiveness of resolution 2020 shall be stayed for 60 days, with the understanding, Clarissa, that we had talked about during that time, the applicant and staff will work on the conditions, that will go through the process that we need to go through by statute or by our ordinances, which will include the public hearing by Planning Commission, and that with the target coming back to us, hopefully, if the timing can be right, in the August meeting. What we would see in August then would be the interim use with the new conditions that have gone through the appropriate processes for us to react to at that point. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and just to be clear, the motion you made, Councilmember DeLuca, includes all 6 of the bullet points, which is changes to the first one.
Correct.
And just to reiterate, that 60 days would be for the applicant and staff to work together and go through the process. Did I hear that right? All
And
right.
just to clarify, it sounds like communication with the property owner, making the effort to communicate with staff, to discuss what needs to be done, create a plan and a initial agreement on how to move forward.
A plan, action steps,
Yeah.
something together, working together with
Modifications.
staff,
Yeah.
and trusting
Well-
them.
But you're actually, I mean, you want him to go through those
Mhm.
steps.
Yes, and then-
Correct.
Yeah,
so
which
he's
is-
a-
which is
They're looking
putting-
for an application.
Right, which is saying the application's gonna have to come in relatively quick.
Correct.
It's gonna have to have understanding between staff and the applicant. It's gonna have to go through the procedures so that we can react to it in August.
All right.
Because it's going to have to be published, and a packet's going to have to be put together for the planning commission, correct?
Yep, and notices and
No,
notice
yep.
in the paper.
Yeah, and
Just like anything.
if I get together with Mark
You'll work it out.
and we think that this is like, whoa, we can't do this, I will certainly let you know right away.
Okay.
But I kind of feel like it's not really gonna be that different from the current as far as what Kurt needs to accomplish. It's just gonna be kind of focusing on that frontage.
Yeah.
And then, enforcement steps is really one of our bigger concerns.
But he mentioned that he was willing to supplement periodic. We'll see if that happens. but-
Sure.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I want to make sure everyone's clear what we're voting on.
And I should say, there was a modification to
Yep,
Mr.
to-
Bjorklund's name too, right? Spelling of it? Mr. Bjorklund's name was spelled
That's-
wrong in the resolution, or not?
He's
Oh,
not.
that- is he in the resolution?
He's not in the resolution.
He is, as in the facts section,
Oh, okay.
Oh,
the findings. We had her name misspelled, correct? Yeah.
yeah.
So we have that change to the resolution.
It's L-U-N-D?
Correct.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? All right, so we have a motion and a second, and it is a roll call vote.
Cahill?
Aye.
DeLuca?
Aye.
Moskowski?
Aye.
Francis?
Aye.
Fay?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for your work on that and commitment. All right, next item of business this evening is the water meter software and endpoints.
Thank you, Mayor. My quote, our quote expires. We've been discussing this. I did reach out, tried to negotiate with Metering Technology for an extended warranty on the software. I don't honestly have much leverage in this, so we kind of played a couple games round and round, but in the end, they appreciated our business and kindly declined. So it's kind of this, like, are we going to do this or not? I'm not sure if the timing matters as far as, from the budget standpoint. It's coming out of utilities, so it's a little easier it's coming out of utility capital. And then I think from a timing standpoint, you will recall the software itself, Read Center is no longer supported. That's not necessarily urgent. I don't expect that the computer to crash. However, the endpoints are no longer available. And so the replacements that we've been putting in and any new have been the manual reads. So those are, it's just kind of this inefficiency at this point. So I guess at this point, I would ask that council approve that purchase of the Beacon software and begin that transition to water meter endpoints if we're comfortable with that.
Any questions for staff? Okay, looking for a motion to approve the purchase of Beacon software and to begin the transition to water meter endpoint to cellular.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill,
Second.
second by Francis. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you for your work and trying on that. Next item of business is the election resolution.
Thank you, Mayor. We did have one revision. It was pointed out to me that in the employee manual, it does not allow council members to be in temporary positions, employees. So I did remove Connie. I did talk with her about that. So we've removed Connie from the resolution for appointing election judges. So happy to answer any questions. These are fairly housekeeping.
Yeah. With that, looking for a motion to approve a resolution appointing election judges for the 2022 primary and 2022 general election. Do I need to name them?
So moved.
Oh, moved by DeLuca.
Second.
Second by Francis. Any further discussion? All right, I'll turn it over to staff for resolution.
Oh, just roll call. Faye.
Aye.
Francis.
Aye.
Moskowski.
Aye.
DeLuca.
Aye.
Cahill. Aye.
All right, the ayes have it, 5-0. Next item of business regarding this is to approve a resolution establishing an absentee ballot board for 2022.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill, second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? All right, it is roll call vote.
Cahill.
Aye.
DeLuca.
Aye.
Moskowski.
Aye.
Francis.
Aye.
Faye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it, 5-0. Next item of business tonight is council reports and other business, and we will start with Councilmember Faye.
Well, let's see if I can find my notes here. I continue to participate in Cornwall Rotary Club. We hosted the Party in the Park event on Saturday the 4th. By all accounts, it was a success, both financially and attendance. Attended a personnel meeting mid-month. We're working out some budgetary questions that will probably work their way to the full city council here within the next month or so. Various workshops and tonight's business meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Francis.
I went to Planning Commission. Learned a lot. There's quite an interesting. I think that's the only meeting outside of workshops and council.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember DeLuca.
Just build a little bit on what Councilmember Fay said. The budget process that we're looking at for finance, I think Clarissa had sent out some information about a workshop that will go on our calendars. Personnel, we have been continuing to work on policy revisions. We're still in the period this year where we're supposed to review the whole policy manual, so we're finishing that up. We also looked ahead to make sure the fire department is looking at their staffing positions next fall, kind of trying to plan ahead for the activities that we have for officer selections. And then finally, we're working very diligently with our vendors on coming up with some ideas that might help our benefit costs for next year without necessarily impacting the benefits. There are some creative ways of working that that we're looking at that potentially could save the city and possibly the police department some dollars. So we're working at that. That should come back to council in another month or so.
Okay. Thank you. I had the pleasure of attending the Memorial Day celebration, which was really lovely. Despite the rainy day, it had to move inside, but always good to recognize our veterans and those who have passed. Attended the Party in the Park. Wonderful event as always. Great turnout. Great to see the community come out again. And also attended the watershed meeting, which is always interesting as well.
Thank you. I was able to attend the future fire service planning with Administrator Hadler. We really just talked about our mission and values and talking about we need to get together with our team and kind of refocus a little bit. So hopefully we'll have updates on that. Had the privilege of sitting in on sergeant interviews and assistant to the city administrator interviews, so welcome again. Have attended Rotary a few times, Northwest Hennepin League of Municipalities. We had Patty from Metro Cities and Gary from League of Minnesota Cities giving our legislative update, or not so much of an update, but always good to hear from them. Was able to attend regional council mayors with Excel Energy, and we talked about our path to a carbon-free, and Met Council Chair Zelli talked as well, and about communities in motion, so lots of good things there. We did have Fire Commission with Councilmember Fay, and Bonnie from Abdo came out and went over that with us, which was really good. West Hennepin Chamber, we had our regular meeting with Relate Counseling, just learning more about our community partners, multiple interactions, with neighbors, and just recently returned from the League of Minnesota Cities Annual Conference, which was our first in-person event since 2019. So that was very encouraging, just to come together with over 700 city officials, staff, and electeds from across the state to develop skills, learn new things and ideas, and recharge. I was able to attend some great educational sessions that I won't bore you with right now because we're all tired, and also was able to attend 3 annual membership meetings there, the League of Minnesota Cities, the Minnesota Women in City Government, and Metro Cities. So lots of stuff going on, and looking forward to a great summer out in our parks with the new picnic benches and playgrounds and being out with everyone.
Don't forget the lights.
Oh, and the lights. Sorry, the lights. We won't really need those till fall, but all right. Anyways, looking for a motion to adjourn. Or does anyone else have any other business? Sorry,
If
our
anybody had
communications.
any leaflet topics that they would like us to address, please just email us.
Okay.
We would be happy to incorporate those.
I forgot to turn the page. Thank you. So
I move to
issues.
adjourn.
Okay. Motion to adjourn by DeLuca. Second by Francis. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The meeting's adjourned at 9:47.